Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and today we'll be doing a debrief of Tally's story. We'll be doing the key takeaways, and we do have a content warning for this episode as we do discuss physical abuse in this episode. And for those of you who have not heard Tally's story yet, here is a summary of her story. So Tally grew up feeling alone. She grew up walking on eggshells and learning how to manage the emotions of all of the adults around her. She left home at a very young age, worked her way through college, became financially independent because she felt like she couldn't rely on other people anymore. And by her mid-20s, she had built a life that she was really proud of, moved to this lakeside town, felt like she really wanted to settle down and just create a family, a stable family, this life that she always wanted. That was her dream. And then she met this older, successful man who lived in the same apartment complex as her. And then they matched on the same dating app. They had similar interests, shared family experiences together that were similar. They both grew up with siblings that were much, much younger than them. And they spent nearly a year as friends before they became a couple. But once that relationship became official, this abuser, he grew jealous when Tally spoke to other men or made plans with friends. And he began checking her phone and involving both his family and her family when disagreements were going on. So the control here began right here. The jealousy began right here. Triangulation also began right there. But that was just the beginning, because then the physical abuse began. And it started with some slaps that Tally was able to explain away and move past. And she was really chalking things up to this person's anger issues. And this person was saying that they were going to go deal with these issues. And they did that a lot, which started to reset a lot of the cycles that were going on. And then during this relationship, not long afterward, eventually Tally discovers that she's pregnant. And even when she's pregnant, the physical abuse doesn't stop here. And Tally eventually tells her father what had happened. Her father confronts the abuser. Once again, the abuser promises that it will never happen again. And the abuser insists that he wants to become a good father and build a family with Tally. And as this pregnancy continues, the abuse escalates. So he kicks down her door in her apartment, throws her belongings around, splashes water in her face at one point, belittles her interests, and really dismissed her needs for having needs and wanting an emotional connection. And over time here, Tally really started to organize herself around the abuser's moods, around the abuser's business stress, and really trying to keep the home as calm as possible to avoid another explosion. And during one incident, the abuser here eventually pins her down and even covers her mouth and nose while she is 8 months pregnant. And Tally eventually makes a police report about this because it was a very violent incident, and the abuser was arrested after he admitted what he had done. And even after he was arrested, there was still talk that he could become better and that he wanted to become a better person, resetting the cycle once again. But shortly after the birth, this person exploded once again, destroyed her phone, portrays himself as a victim, and really starts to become even more hostile toward her. Eventually, the relationship ended after Tally was physically abused in their car with the newborn in the back seat. And then the abuser here just kind of leaves and abandons Tally. And Tally took legal action, later connected with several of this person's former partners who describe very similar patterns of what they went through as well. And all of these stories really helped Tally understand who she was dealing with and that this was never going to change. And it really helped Tally move forward, protecting herself and her child. So that is a summary of Tally's story. And now we're going to go into the key takeaways of Tally's story. And the first one is the family dream, keeping this relationship alive. So Tally grew up around instability, split parents, combative step parents, and the feeling that relying on other people was just unsafe. And she went through her rebellious years, but then got bored of it and wanted really to just start her life. And that meant the dream of a family. She knew what she wanted. She was self-sufficient, and she was just looking for the next step in her life. And she wanted a partner, children, and just the security of a family that felt different from the one that she had known, that she grew up with. And then she meets this man who appears to fit this future, to fit this family dream. And when the relationship became abusive, she just wasn't facing the possibility of losing her partner. She started to face the loss of this family that she had imagined, this dream that was with her. It was very strong within her. It's something that she did not want to lose. She didn't want to be a single mom. And that belief or dream really kept Tally hanging on. However, it's part of her story. It's a sliver of the reasoning of why she stayed. And key takeaway number 2 is the promises that kept this dream alive. And for Tally, number 2 here, promises reset the abuse cycle. So Tally's abuser didn't deny that the abuse happened. He admitted to his issues, then said he'd get help. He went to pastors, counselors, family members, admitted these things. It sounded like accountability, but these things were very short-lived, and they'd always restart the abuse cycle. So there's this temporary calm that is going on. The promise here made everything feel believable that this person would take accountability, but it was a false accountability. These promises were happening, and all these things would do were reset these abuse cycles to begin again. So you combine that with the family dream, Tally's now still in this relationship, hoping that things could change, which is keeping her in this relationship longer. And for many of you, you might hear this and feel like this is validating your story as well. And then key takeaway number 3 here is Tally's needs were turned into evidence against her. So Tally tried to communicate her needs on many occasions. The abuser told her to explain exactly what she wanted when she wanted to discuss her needs. And so she did. She asked for affection, she asked for kind words, and she wanted an emotional connection with this person. But Tally's abuser said that she was demanding too much from someone like him who was just busy building a business. So then it became about his needs, and it made her feel like her needs were getting in the way of his needs. And just to clarify here, Tally's needs here were very basic. They weren't anything crazy at all here. She was not asking for very much. She was asking for the bare minimum. But the abuser here made her feel that her needs were demanding, that they were distracting him, that they were making his life harder. So once her needs were framed this way, Tally began making herself small and then began placating his needs after that. So she began to clean his environment, make sure that he was fed. She tried to remove anything that might add to his stress. So this emotional caretaking became really central to this relationship at a certain point. So when Tally asked for her needs to be met, he then flipped it back on her and made her feel bad for having needs because of what he was going through. And now she is now focusing on him trying to make his life easier. So this is how this abuser did that. So Tally's needs here were really dismissed as a whole. And I'm sure a lot of you have gone through that or are going through that right now. And then the next one on our list is we have triangulation with the abuser's family. So Tally's abuser often brought his family into their life to put Tally down or to see things his way. He told her that his mother thought she was crazy. The mother-in-law at one point later excuses the assault on Tally by saying that Tally had been mean to him. They're creating a relationship here where Tally was rarely dealing with just one person. There was always another opinion going on. Eventually, the father-in-law chimes in saying that Tally is the reason for her son's arrest. He's excusing the fact that Tally's abuser abused her physically and even strangled her. They're trying to put the blame on her and putting another voice in there. It's more than one voice now. Now you have two voices, three voices to make Tally think that it is her fault of everything that is going on. And triangulation like this can really make a survivor feel as if they're constantly defending themselves. Suddenly, someone else comes in here and they become evidence as well. When several people here are seeing the same thing or saying the same thing, that it is your fault, it's hard to overcome that evidence. Tally was able to, because she had some outside influence from one of her friends saying, no, that is wrong. But for many people, it's hard to actually push your way through this and see it for what it is when so many people are trying to reinforce the opinion of the abuser. And for most people, this can keep abuse victims in a relationship much longer. And then the next thing on our list is leaving after conflict gave the abuser control. So this was something that showed up a lot in Tally's story. After the conflict, he would leave. Sometimes he disappeared for a few days. Other times he went on a trip. After the final assault, he flew to Florida and left Tally with their newborn. So when Tally is left behind here, she's left behind with fear, confusion, trying to understand what is going on. She's the one that has to sit with being hurt. She's the one sitting there with uncertainty. She's questioning whether this person is going to be coming back. Meanwhile, the abuser, he decides when he wants to reappear. It's all up to him. He decides when he wants to apologize, and he decides when the relationship was allowed to move forward again. So this is creating a really uneven process. A healthy repaired process requires both people to stay emotionally present, do it long enough to address exactly what has happened. And there needs to be room for someone like Tally, a victim here, to speak, ask a lot of questions, set new boundaries, and decide what they need. And that does not happen here at all. The abuser here is leaving, then returning with a realization or an apology. And these realizations or apologies would really be the repair. It wasn't actual real repair. Tally is just happy that he is now back. It's making her have some sort of relief. When someone is attached to you, they just want you back because it's going to make them feel better that you are just back. So it might feel like repair, but it is just not repair. They're really controlling the situation. Everything is in their court. And, you're only really getting breadcrumbs on the other end when they do come back. And that's the way they're able to reset the whole entire cycle again. And then the last thing on our list is the abuser uses self-awareness to keep hope alive. And I know this is kind of retreading on a lot of stuff that we've already discussed here, but Tally's partner really sounded self-aware. He said he had an anger problem. He's able to name that he has an anger problem. He says he doesn't want to become like his father. He's saying that out loud. He told her that he felt as though nobody could love him for who he was. So he's talking a lot in this self-awareness way. Those statements really made it sound like he really understands himself. But self-awareness can feel hopeful because it suggests that the person here is finally seeing the problem, that they know what the problem is. So a survivor might think that once this person understands where their behavior comes from, that change will naturally follow. But in Tally's relationship, that just didn't happen. So awareness is only one thing, and you still have to make those changes. So you can say everything that you want. It's just like a promise, but unless there's actual real change, nothing is going to happen. And for Tally and many of you out there, sometimes an abuser is self-aware of everything that they do, but they still don't change. And that's just another form of control when this happens, and it can keep these relationships going for longer as well. So those are our key takeaways from Tally's story, and these are the things that I want for Tally going forward. The first thing I want for Tally is freedom from managing other people's emotions. She's been doing it her whole entire life. She was managing people's emotions when she was a child, and now in this relationship, she was always considering what might upset him, stress him, embarrass him, cause another explosion. And I just want Tally to be able to focus on her own emotions, her own needs, and, obviously her child's as well. And the second thing that I want for Tally is just a full return to the person that she was before this relationship began, because Tally had interests before. She loved nature, hiking, holistic wellness, personal development. Those were parts of her. And this is something that this abuser also belittled. And I just want her to enjoy these things again without hearing any criticism about them in the background by anyone. And she was also caretaking a lot of his needs. So I just want her to really return to the person that she was before the relationship and having all of these interests and really diving into them as well. And then the last thing on this list for Tally that I want is just to grieve this family dream that she lost. This was really big. It's something that she never had in her life. She didn't want to have a family and then become a single mom. That was the last thing that she wanted to do. So now she is a single mom. She doesn't have this partner that she did before. And it's something to be sad over. It's something that you should grieve and take the time to grieve. And I really just want her to take this time. This dream is gone, but she still has a long life ahead of her to create new dreams. And I want that for all of you out there as well, too. So if you're listening to this episode, I hope that you found this debrief helpful, insightful, validating. And if you want to be a guest on our Survivor Story episodes like Tally was, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Click on our guest form button, fill out the form, and we'll go from there. Also at our website, we have a support group. So join our support group. We have Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. We have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation you need from survivors just like you. So join our support group today. And we also have a newsletter where you get a free workbook for every new survivor story that comes out. So join our newsletter today at narcissistapocalypse.com. And that is it for the debrief of Tally's survivor story. So for myself and Tally, we hope you have a good night.